Hello, I'm going to show y'all how to do the mask with the tie or the elastic. I have the elastic obviously on these that I just did, but we're also going to I'm also going to show you how to make the nose piece that bends over your nose so it'll stay on there. Um, and if you have a smaller head, then you're probably wanting you to do your elastic 6 inches long instead of 7. But that's preference. You don't want it to be too tight because it'll hurt your ears really bad. I'm making these for 2 elderly people, and they have a smaller head than I do, so I made theirs 6 inches elastic. But if you don't have the wire, you don't have to do this nose piece. It just stays a lot better, so that way it can lay on your face and it's not up in your eyes like some of the masks that don't have that piece in it. And it's not to say that you don't have to have a wire piece, but you can do it so it'll lay flatter. But this is a tutorial on how to make a mask with interfacing and a wire nose piece. Okay, so you have your one big piece like this that you cut out. It was 6 by 9, and you cut it on the fold, so it was folded like this when you cut it. If you have interfacing, that's what this piece of fabric is that I've semi-ironed on. You can buy it at Walmart sometimes, but this is what I got if you want to use that instead of a piece of another fabric. But if you want to just use another piece of fabric, then you're just going to put one more piece of fabric here as a single layer instead of it being one whole piece. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to put good side to good side, and you're going to put it together and make sure that everything's lined up, and then you can put a straight pin in it to hold it in place. So I'm going to pin it just a couple times up here at the top just to hold it in place. And if you have an iron, you can iron this down flat so it'll stay. Okay, if you are using the wire for the nose piece of this, then I'll show you how to start this out. Okay, if you want to use a wire, and if you don't want to use a wire, then you don't have to do this step. But if you want to use a wire, you're going to sew a casing all the way across the top right here at 1/4 of an inch. So after you sew it, you're going to start here and backstitch, and then go all the way down and then backstitch. If you're hand sewing it, then you could do a backstitch here, like you come up and go back, come up and go back, and then do a running stitch all the way down, and then do a back stitch down here to finish it out. Then you can feed that piece of wire through this casing, and it only really needs to be about 6 to 7 inches long. And once you get it fed in there after you do that casing, you're gonna stitch up and down here and up and down here to hold that wire piece in place. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to hand sew or use a machine and sew all the way down here. And if you need me to show you how to do hand sewing on this, I'll do it, but I feel like you got that down. It's just a running stitch, and then you can do the back stitch here at the end and here at the end. Or you can do a back stitch all the way down so you'll know it stays in place. But you're going to do like 1/4 of an inch. So when you sew it, it should only have about that much that you've sewn down to have it in place. So I'm using floral wire because that's what I have here at the house. And if you have a pipe cleaner or something else that's wire-like, you can use it too. I've cut two, I don't know if you can see them, I've cut 2 pieces about 6 inches long. And then I have this piece of frog tape, or painter's tape, or masking tape, whatever you want to, whatever you got. You can even use duct tape. But I'm going to place my wires parallel to each other, and I'm going to try to get them as straight as I can. And then we're going to fold the tape over it, so we're creating like a almost wider wire because we don't have a wider wire, or I don't. And you're just going to fold this tape over the top of this, and you can fold these end pieces in too if you would like, so that way it's not going to come out of it when you try to start feeding it through. But I'm just going to fold it, I'm going to try to fold it smaller than 1/4 of an inch so y'all can feed it through and put it on your nose. Okay, so I'm trimming it up. I'll show you what it looks like once I get it folded in here. Hard to cut tape. Okay, so I just pinched the ends together to make sure that the wire would not come out, and I made just a little piece like this. So after you sew this casing, you're going to feed this through. Alright, so if you have a sewing machine, you're going to take and start it down here at the end. And I'm keeping this in line with this 1/4 of an inch like I've done before. So I'm going to come up 3 stitches, and then I'm going to go in reverse 3. And then you're going to go all the way to the end. And then when you get to the end, you're going to back stitch it to make sure it's in place. And then we'll raise our needle and we're going to cut it off. And then you can use your scissors to trim off the thread. Okay, so after I get that done, I'm going to feed my little wire piece that I made into one end. Okay, just remember that you got to make the wire piece smaller than the casing. So if you get it a little bit too big, you're going to have to do what I'm doing and force it into the nose piece. Okay, so I've got it fed through, and it's pretty much in the midpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and just stitch up and down right here and up and down right here to hold it in place. And if you're hand stitching, same thing. You're just going to sew it down, and then I'll just do a back stitch like you've been doing with everything else, just to make sure it stays. And like I told y'all before, if you need me to review back stitching or a running stitch, I will do that. I probably will just post a tutorial video that we've watched before just to have it, so y'all will be able to do it. Okay, so those are my 2 pieces that I have sewn to keep it in place so it doesn't move around. And that way too, when you wash it, it's not going to come out of the casing whenever you're washing it and drying it. But anyways, that's what you're going to do for the nose piece. And like I told y'all before, this is optional. You do not have to do this, but it just stays on your nose better if you do. So if you do want to do that, then that's what you're going to do. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is you're going to put your elastic in, or your ties. So I have elastic, so I'm going to do the elastic. I have another part on here that I'm going to show you how to do the ties. Okay, so after I sewed that casing and put my wire in there, I'm going to put my elastic right up against it. I'm just sticking this down in the 2 pieces of fabric that are good side to good side. And I'm going to pin these down. I'm going to put a pin in right here, and then I'm going to take and put my other pin down here. So when you do this elastic, make sure that you are pulling this piece out from underneath right here, so you'll know that it's not going to get in the way of you sewing. I have made my elastic smaller than I told y'all to cut because I'm making this for somebody else that has a smaller head. You can do 7-inch elastic, but I cut this one 6. I would just be mindful if you have a bigger head that you probably don't need to do a 6-inch one. It needs to be 7. So I'm going to do both sides, and once you get both sides pinned, you can put one in the middle too because it's kind of gathering, and that way too it just keeps it together and the elastic's out of the way. So there's my 3 pins on that side, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Alright, so I've got both sides pinned and ready to sew. Remember, when we're sewing this together, we're going to start, and you can mark it. I guess I can show you how to mark it. We're going to mark it here and here, and you could start here and go down and then come all the way down. Okay, if you've already fed the wire thing through, then you don't have to worry about stopping right here at the casing. But if you're going to feed this through at the end, you don't need to sew over this because you got to feed that nose piece in. Alright, so you're going to start it at that pin, and we're always doing the 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to start it, and I'm going to come up 3 stitches, and then I'm going to go back. I'm going to take my pin out as I go so I don't get it caught up in the sewing machine. Okay, and then you're going to pivot, and we learned that, and this is only if you have a sewing machine. You can still do this while you're hand sewing too. Okay, so we're going to go across that elastic, and then I'm going to go over it again so it stays in place, and I'm just going to keep going down the side of the mask, and then when I get to that pin, I'm going to just pull it slightly over, and then I'm going to reverse it again just to make sure the elastic's intact. So you're going to do that to both sides, and after you do that, I'm going to show you how to flip it right side out. Alright, so I have ironed mine down, and I actually stuck a pin in it just to keep it intact, so when we start folding the pleats, it'll stay there. Alright, so what you're going to do on this, y'all marked your midpoint on your pattern. So if you wanted to, you can make a mark right here so you could have it, but honestly, the easiest way to do it is to fold it in half, and that's your midpoint, and you can kind of make a crease. I'm going to fold it. Okay, so you're going to fold it, and then you're going to lay it over just like that, about 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, just like we've been doing with everything else. And I'm going to take a pin and actually pin that in place just like that so it'll stay. Then I'm going to come straight across from it because all these need to be going the same way. I'm going to find the midpoint on this side, and then I'm going to fold it 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to pull tight to make sure that it lines up all the way across from the other one. So I'm going to take my pins, and I'm just going to keep doing that for 3 pleats all the way down, and then that way they're all going to be lined up and even. Okay, I have pinned all of them down like I wanted them to be, and if you can look on the end, it's folded like this. They're all going the same way, and it's the same thing on this side, so that way they'll pleat in the center when you start sewing it. So now what you're going to do is you're going to sew all the way around it 2 times so these will stay in place. I'm going to go ahead and warn you, if you're using a machine, that you're going to have to kind of force this in because it's so thick of a pleat. But if you're hand stitching, your needle should be sharp enough that you can push through And once you get to these pins, you're just going to slide them out too, so they won't get caught under the machine or your hand needle. But we're going to start, you're just going to pick a corner. I'm just going to start on this one, and I'm going to go down, and I'm going to pivot and go all the way around. Okay, remember y'all's nose piece is in here. So when you sew this, you need to make sure that you're going far enough over it that you're not going to sew on top of it. And then when you get here, you're going to pivot again and come down and come back around and make sure you catch this hole that you left open. So we're going to sew it all the way around and do it twice, and that should be it. And then you can iron it down to make sure the pleats lay down correctly, and you'll have your mask. Okay, so here is the mask, and it's sewn 2 times all the way around. I'm going to take my iron over here, and I'm just going to press it down so those pleats will stay intact. And like I told y'all too, if you're going to wash these, which you should, you'll have to press them down to make sure the pleats stay, and especially after you dry them too, so that way they'll stay down. But that's what it's gonna look like. Your nose piece is up here, so when you put it on and then you stretch it out over your face, that's what it's gonna look like. So there's your face mask.